All right, we're on air. It is Thursday, April 26th, one day post Med security update. Thank you all for being here. Let's see. We have one new member of the Backdrop Contrib group this week, Vestamin, ported CSS injector. Got approved earlier this week, and there's already a release out. So thanks so much for joining Contrib and helping us with module ports. Since last week's meeting, we had another new release of a module, which is maintenance page. So if anyone was interested in that module from Drupal 7, we now have a version for Backdrop, which is great. There's a bunch of other stuff that are getting updates too, but I didn't bother to add them to the agenda. Okay, so for our web properties, backdropcms.org, hopefully we'll be getting an update to the display of modules, themes, and layouts pages, as well as some minor changes to functionality, like, for example, search results need to do a better job of returning the results you want when you search for them. We have a bunch of issues on backdropcms.org around being able to find modules, themes, and layouts on our website, and hopefully those will get some attention as soon as the 1.10 release is out, maybe even before, during code freeze. The forum site is waiting for a search box. I thought about playing with it while I was doing the security updates yesterday, since I was on there anyway, but I thought better of it since I had a lot of other things to update. But it will come soon. It just needs some CSS on the search result listing page. And that is it for our related websites. So I'd like to turn it over to Nate to talk about all of the fantastic stuff that's been happening in Backdrop itself lately.
All right, thank you. I haven't gotten all of the things updated yet. I was afraid that would happen, but lots of things are happening. It's been a really crazy week. I'm sure in the land of Drupal because of the security updates, and the land of Backdrop because of our corresponding updates. And also, this is our last week before feature freeze for 1.10, which is May 1st, which is this coming Tuesday. So less than a week left to get done many of the things that we would like to do, and we've got large ambitions for those things. Kind of as always happens, we're coming up on like the slam where it's like everybody's like trying to get in their feature before the next release, which, you know, getting in or not, it's really awesome to see this level of activity in the Backdrop issue queue. So let's go through the items that we have on the agenda, although sad to say, I doubt we'll be comprehensive just because there's so many things that have been happening. So let's see, 1.9.6. Okay, so first of all, minor or bug fix releases. 1.9.5 came out yesterday, corresponding with Drupal 7.59. That was a security update for variations on the Drupal Geddon 2 attacks that are out there. And we are fairly certain in the Backdrop community that those exploits are actively hitting sites out there, including Backdrop websites. So it's imperative that you get updated to the latest version of Backdrop 1.9.5. Or if you would like, we also did a 1.8.4 release if you're still on 1.8, although really with upgrades between minor versions being really pretty seamless in Backdrop, really just updating to the latest version is highly encouraged. 1.9.6 will be the next bug fix release, and we've got a good 20 or so issues that are all tagged for 1.9.6. And being tagged in the next bug fix release really just means that they are kind of higher importance bugs that need to be corrected as soon as possible. The one that we'll call out during these meetings is the same one we've been doing, which is 2904. All 1.9 release, we've had this problem where database credentials are now URL encoded. And if you have a percent symbol in your password, that can cause Backdrop not to be able to connect to the database. And so I did post a comment on that one, kind of with my rough idea of how that could possibly be implemented. We actually have a fix in place that it'll try one password, and if that fails, he'll try another password, the URL encoded version of the password. But we need to report to the user in the status report that we're using a fallback behavior so that they can correct it. I feel like there's probably other 196 issues that I'd like to bring up because there are a bunch of them. But I'm not going to because we have a lot of other things to cover. So please take a look at the 1.9.6 milestone. There's a bunch of really great issues in there. Almost all of them have pull requests of some kind, and maybe a quarter of them are in a needs review state. 1.10 is our next minor version. Like I said, feature freeze is May 1st, followed by release on May 15th. Things that we are improving for this release include another round of user experience improvements, first impression improvements, translation improvements, and improvements to installing modules, themes, and layouts. So first impression improvements. It's funny because I feel like we added all of these just like 2 weeks ago to the agenda, and all of these are now merged. So that's really exciting. The first one is issue 3032, which is set the time zone based on browser JavaScript APIs. So browsers now have access to time zone information, which is a relatively new feature. And that makes it so that if you live in a non-popular time zone, I guess, like if you live on, the example I keep using is Arizona, because Arizona previously, if you lived there, we used to only use offset from GMT. And so half the year you would be put into the Los Angeles time zone, and the other half of the year you would be put into the Denver time zone, neither of which is accurate for somebody that lives in Arizona, which doesn't observe daylight savings. So now using the new JavaScripts, if you live in Arizona or any time zone that is not like the quote primary time zone or the first time zone in the list that matches that offset, then your time zone is now correctly selected during the installation process. And also, if you have new users, select a time zone instead of using the site default, it now correctly sets the time zone per user as well. My hope had actually been to remove the time zone from the installer, but you can read the discussion there in issue 3032 where I conceded, maybe just fixing the time zone is good for now, and maybe later we'll remove the time zone, but for now there's no issue tracking that. So also in the installer, password field updates. For a long time, we've been hoping to make it so that we can make our password fields more mobile friendly. And one way to do that is to make it so that you don't have to type in your password twice whenever you encounter a password field. Instead, allow the password to be entered only once, and then have a visibility toggle field that lets you see the password that you typed in. And that makes it so that you can still get the error correction that you would get from having a confirmation by having the user visually confirmed that what they typed is what they wanted, but save them the trouble of needing to actually go through the process of typing them in twice. That issue is issue 297, and that has been merged. Follow-up on that is that we need to update the Form API docs because now password fields have new properties. And conveniently, we separated out password confirm from password strength. So now you can have password strength on any password field and password toggle, as it's called, on any password field. And you don't need to use the password confirm element. Password confirm element is still in core, but it's no longer used anywhere except for in our tests. Jeff also had a great follow-up to that one, suggesting that we move the show hide label. I don't have that issue number right here in the agenda, but that needs some kind of design UX feedback. We've been having a discussion back and forth on that one and the problems that may cause. Let's see, during the installer, we had this problem that was raised by, one second while I load the issue, that was raised by Drupalisto. Drupalisto made the suggestion that when he was trying to install Backdrop using localhost as the database connection string doesn't work for him, but 127.0.0.1 did. And the history of this issue is really pretty interesting. You can read it in issue 2520 that a lot of times using localhost doesn't work, and more frequently 127.0.0, you know what I mean, .1 does work. But sometimes it's reversed. Sometimes the IP address works and sometimes localhost doesn't. Oh wait, the other way around. Sometimes the IP address doesn't work and the localhost does. And so the suggestion that we had there is merely to try both. If you're using localhost or the IP address, try the one that is entered by the user first. And then if that one doesn't work, then flip and try the other one. And since that host option is hidden by default, it makes, which I think is a good assumption, that the database is on the same server as the web server. If one doesn't work, then just try the other one. And I think it's a really great enhancement. Thanks, Jeff, for doing the code review and merging on that one. I really appreciate it. Also in the category of thank you, Jeff, for reviewing and merging things, issue 496, which is also related to databases and also related to installation. And that is merely that if you don't have a database that exists, but you have access to create one based on your user and your database username and password, that we merely create the database and then start installing Backdrop into that database if the user that you have entered in the installer has access to do so. So that's issue 496, and that one has been merged as well. So taken all together, maybe there's actually some other installer related issues, but I'm really pretty stoked about this collection of installer updates to make it so that just the chances for success are much higher when a user goes through the installation process. Very exciting all together and individually. Next section is translation improvements. Well, actually, before I move on, I feel like I should pause because I've been going through a lot. Do you guys have any feedback or anything that you'd like to add regarding first impression, installer updates, or anything of that nature? Okay, just general positivity. Okay, I'm excited too. Okay, let's talk about translation improvements. I haven't taken a look at this one yet. So issue 225, making menu items translatable, has been just chilling out. Like we have a plan. We have a pull request that is so close, but it's just not complete. It just needs some terminology rerolls, and we just haven't gotten around to updating that. So issue 225, still, once again, like I think we can make that in for 1.10. It just needs a little bit of work. Let's see, issue 2956, which is block translation, is also in a really, really good state. We went through a couple rounds of code review a couple weeks ago. Bjorn ST has gone through and addressed all feedback and updated his pull request. And functionality-wise, that one has been marked RTBC a couple of times because the functionality is there and it works and it's well implemented. However, it's missing tests, and we're stuck on that point. Our contributor there is not written tests before, and so that's an area where like we could use some assistance, just stubbing out some tests for that pull request, and then we can get that merged in. Once again, really optimistic about that possibility that it's pretty much ready functionality-wise, just but we have to get test coverage for such an expansion of functionality. Also in translation improvements, one that's not going to make it for 1.10, it looks like at this point, I'm just going to say it's not going to make it for 1.10, and that's config translation. Issue 704 is the expansion of how locale module works to make it so that it handles translating config files consistently. We already translate things that are stored in config, like the content type title and content type descriptions and any administrative labels. All of those things are run through locale module right now, but the strings are not managed in a way that they're discoverable, and that makes it so that the POTX module can't extract those strings and then have them translated like in the out-of-box experience for Backdrop if you were using a downloaded translation of Backdrop, because the strings aren't possible to find right now. So that one, there's still really great discussion and we still have a really great plan, but the implementation's not there. And so that one's definitely going to be punted to 1.11 at this point. Okay, that's it for translation improvements. You guys have any feedback or commentary on additional translation functionality?
Sorry, this is Jen. I just wanted to say really quickly that usually we would, if something had slipped more than one milestone, we would remove the milestone entirely. But because I think config translation is important, I just pushed it to 111. I hope everybody agrees with that, but I'd love to see that make some progress. That's all.
And I just had a curiosity question. This is Laren. The translation implementations are different than what's done in Drupal 7, right? So I'm just curious, when the time comes to upgrade a multilingual Drupal 7 site, will it fit into this scenario, or is that something that'll be more of a manual thing?
No, it's highly compatible with Drupal 7, and the issue there, the reason that we're taking the approach that we are is entirely because it's compatible. If we compare our implementation to Drupal 8, Drupal 8 made a third segment of translation. There's content translation, localization, locale module, which is user interface strings, and then they added a third category for config translation. And config translation in Drupal 8 is a third type of translation that is entirely different from anything that was available in Drupal 7. In Backdrop, config translation will be an extension of locale translation or user interface translation that we will continue to do exactly what we're doing today, where config essentially, like certain config strings, like the label for a content type, will continue to be run through T, just like it is today and just like it was in Drupal 7. But we're adding a mechanism to make it so that translatable strings within config files are discoverable by the translation extractor. And so when you look at a list of strings that need to be translated, it will include user interface strings, which are extracted from modules. And it will also include strings from config files that need to be translated. So we're actually just we're not even expanding the way locale module is used, because that's exactly what happens today, that we're just translating strings that are in config files. But the problem we have is we don't know which strings within config files need to be translated. And so this makes it so that we'll have a way of identifying which strings in config files need to be translated. And that way, when you run the POTX module to say, find me all the strings, it can read through all of the default config provided by modules and say, these strings also need to be translated, just as though they were strings in the module that were surrounded by the T function.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. But yeah, all of that, it actually, yeah, even like I just said, it's not actually changing the functionality. It's just enhancing our APIs for discoverability. So in that regard, it would be really awesome to have it, but I think the reason why it's been kind of piddling along is because it doesn't really affect people's existing websites, because their existing websites already have the ability to translate everything that's in the config that they need to. And it's really about making it so that new installations can get the strings that they need for out of box and when you install new modules and things like that. So from a general site or developer perspective, it's, you know, helping new users of Backdrop and not so much about helping themselves. And that can sometimes, I don't know, sometimes that can really motivate people, and sometimes they're just like, not my problem. So, all right, that's it for translation improvements. Let's move on to the improvements to the installation of extensions like modules, themes, and layouts. The first one that we have here is a UX improvement, issue 2973, that the instant filter on the modules page should include the category names as well as the module name and description. And that issue 2973 has been merged. And special thanks to Opie for doing not only multiple reviews on that pull request, but then afterwards filing another pull request because we didn't get it quite right to his satisfaction. So he filed another pull request to fix things that we also merged in. So thank you, Opie, our star reviewer, I think, in the Backdrop issue queue. Let's see, showing screenshots for themes when you're using the installer module. It would be really great if you could see what a theme was going to look like before you installed it. And since themes already have screenshots, both on backdropcms.org and after you have installed it, issue 3040 has made it so that we start showing that screenshot in the listings when you're installing new themes through the installer module. That issue has been merged, which is very exciting. Thank you, Jen, for putting that together. I think it shocked me that all of the infrastructure was already there for that, and we just had to output it. One of those things that was really great, that when you look at how difficult the problem was, and it turned out not to be difficult at all. In fact, all infrastructure was already there, and we just needed to actually theme it, essentially. So that's great. There's a follow-up issue for that, issue 1517. Looks like Jen just bumped it before this meeting, during this meeting, to 1.11. And that's expanding the functionality of screenshots so that themes can have multiple screenshots, and things like modules and layouts can have a screenshot to begin with. Because right now, only layouts, can have screenshots, and there would be multiple of them. Yep.
So I think we need to figure out how we want to handle a slideshow in the software itself. Like there's some like more meta conversations we have to have about that. Like, do we want to include a library for slideshows in core, or do we want to write our own thing for that? So I think we don't really have time for those conversations before the next release. But the thing that was really motivating me to get that done was the fact that you couldn't see anything at all currently. And now that we have theme screenshots, that's good. In working on that theme screenshot issue, I also added the infrastructure to backdropcms.org to support a single screenshot for layouts and modules. So as layouts and modules get updated and have new releases, if they have screenshots, we'll be able to pull them into backdropcms.org. So that means in the future, we should also be able to add single screenshots to modules and layouts more quickly. So it's sort of like the change we just did for themes. But there weren't any there yet because we didn't have those fields to hold those images yet. So it's kind of where baby steps. We're like setting up for modules and layouts, and then we need to figure out how to do the slideshows, which is kind of a harder conversation.
Yep, and it's worth noting that the way you add screenshots to themes and the way that initially at least you'll add screenshots to layouts and modules is through the module code itself. So if you upload a screenshot to your theme, that is the screenshot that will show up on backdropcms.org, and it's the screenshot that will show up in the installer.
Oh, and there's a catch with that too. You have to actually name the file screenshot.ping. If you use the screenshot equals line in your theme and your screenshot is not named screenshot.ping, it won't work. So we've got an issue to fix that too.
But extending to modules and layouts, the process will likely be the same or similar, that you'll be adding the images to your GitHub repository, and then the packager will get those images copied over onto backdropcms.org and then start using them.
And we need to talk about too, like if we want to start allowing multiple screenshots at larger sizes, maybe we should have the packager then remove those screenshots from the module that gets installed on someone's site, so that we're not bogging down the file size of Backdrop with massive images rather than the code that's actually needed to run the modules and layouts. And what have you.
Yep, agreed. And that probably means that, the releases themselves will have the images removed. Yes, you just said that. Okay. Totally agree. And we can, let's not talk about the packager. The packager can do all kinds of amazing things. Like, we can make it happen. I really like the packager. It's really cool. And yeah, it's great to see that we're seeing some activity on enhancing it. Okay, other features for 1.10. I feel like there's another one in here that needs to be mentioned. I can't remember what it is. First of all, let's talk about issue 3001, which is automatic comment closing, which I think Herbdul has been leading the charge on. Is that correct? Hang on, I'm pulling it up. Yes, Herbdul has been leading the charge. And he's been doing an awesome job. Like, this thing is really, really fantastic. There's lots of reviewing that's happening. Right now, we're tied down in semantics. We're tied down in naming things on this issue, I think. But functionality-wise, we've had lots of reviewing. And everybody is very excited about the functionality. It looks really fantastic. And this adds the ability to, per content type and on a per node basis, you can say close comments on this post after like 30 days or something like that. And it makes it so that it will close that, as that deadline gets passed, then comments will automatically be shut off by cron job. Something that's very cool about this also that I'm excited about, we'll need some follow-up issues, is that it adds a new column to the node table. So in addition to created and updated, when the node is created and when the node is last updated, it adds a column for published. And what the name of that column is, we haven't decided yet. I think that's one of the sticky things, whether it's published on or published date or something like that. But it adds another column describing with a timestamp that contains the when the content is actually published, which is great.
You're talking about the next issue.
Oh, am I? Oh,
yeah,
I am. That's the one that was exciting. Sorry. Okay, I take all of that back. Comment closer is in really great shape. It even has tests, and it's not held up by semantics. So let's get that one in. 3001 is super close. Let's just knock it out and make it happen. Scheduler, also related to cron jobs. This is how I got confused. Issue 857 has seen a lot of really amazing work in the past week that makes it so that you can schedule the publishing of content. And again, both of these two issues, we have a meta issue for trying to obtain editorial feature parity with WordPress. And this is a part of that. So making it so that you can publish content by scheduling it. And this one is the one that then adds a third column for when content is published, because that becomes different than when that was created or when it was updated. And Scheduler in Drupal 7 did some workarounds for this, that it was like, it had the idea of like touch the created date to update it to be the time that it was published, which is all a little bit, it's wonky logic trying to figure that out. Because then the last published time or last edited time is actually before the last created or the created time. It's a big mess. What this means, though, is that as follow-up issues to this, we'll need to make it so that the published column gets full view support and starts being used as like the submitted by date, because what you should see, like, when something, when like the line says submitted by username at date, that still, I think, shows created date. And after this, it should start showing published date. Jen, can you correct me on that? Has that been updated?
That's not in the pull request. That was one of my pipe dreams. But it's not called published date. It's called scheduled date.
What?
Currently.
Okay, whatever.
We can't name things because naming things is hard.
Yeah. So there's concern around the word published, even though would match, created, updated, published, because published makes it sound like it's a Boolean flag, like 0, 1, instead of being a timestamp. So I don't know. Let's continue discussing that one in the issue.
It doesn't seem like a huge hang up. Well, yeah.
I mean, I think the issue is for like people who aren't already familiar with the system, don't know there's a status. And they're like, how do I find out if this node is published or not? And they look at the node and they're like, oh, there's a node published value. And then they'll grab it and they'll be like, is it true? And if it's a date, it'll be yes. But that's not really.
But if the node is not published, we just remove the date and have it return 0. And so it'll work in Booleans.
Yeah, that's
as a flag if need be.
Yeah.
Huh. I'm not sure about that.
The problem is if the node is not published, that's going to contain a scheduled date. So when will it be published?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So,
no.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, there's something we could do like with a node property, like we could add a node scheduled if it's not published and then use node published as 0. But in the database, the published column will always contain the date, even if it's in the future and the node's not published. So, I mean, we can maybe clean it up, but would you weigh in the issue? Because we're having a hard time.
Or is there any node unpublishing that we're doing?
No, not scheduling.
Okay. Because if we can schedule. Yeah. I was just thinking, because if we can just have scheduled be like published or unpublished, it just flips it. And then published be just when it was published. Anyway, I'll look at the issue.
Yeah, I think for the time being, what this will mean is scheduled unpublishing will get kicked to contrib. And I think we even have scheduler for backdrop, and that probably means that module will need to, I would probably say that module be deprecated, and then a new like scheduled unpublished scheduler would be like a smaller scope module, because it'll be a lot simpler now.
An unscheduler.
Yeah, unscheduler, exactly. Anyway, overall status for that one, we're in a time crunch, but I think that one is feasible for us to complete for 1.10. Even though like some of those pipe dream things that Jen mentioned or that I mentioned won't be complete for 1.10.
Well,
that's
we can
fine.
maybe do some of them after code freeze, like the changing the updated date to the
Possibly.
Maybe.
Possibly.
We'll see how Nate feels about it.
Yeah.
It's part of a cleanup, right? A cleanup of a new feature, maybe.
Well, we shouldn't be committing anything that we know needs additional work. So.
Right. But I don't think it would be needs work. It would just be like we've added the new feature and the new feature works. We're just updating other things that are related, like the
right.
Yeah.
And so things like that, we actually encourage, iterative development as much as possible. But iterative development and maintaining backwards compatibility, sometimes those two things can be difficult to do at the same time. So we like to make sure that we don't break backwards compatibility going forward, but iterating is great. So I think we're nearing that point that we'll reach a decision and then we can build off of that foundation. Okay, last one for user feature improvements. Is this one actually intended to be in the feature parity with WordPress section?
Yeah, they can do this in WordPress.
Okay. Is the ability to upload files into the rich text editor the same way that you can upload images into the rich text editor in a similar fashion. So when you use the image button, you can upload images. And conceptually, we want to make it so that if you use the link button, you can upload a file and have the newly created link to the file that you've just uploaded. So kind of an extension of the way images are managed, make it handle other remaining types of files in a similar fashion. This one currently needs some feedback, but I think actually Graham72 has been leading the charge on this one, has also been requesting JavaScript help on that one.
He's got the JavaScript working. He wanted a code review, which I thought maybe OP could help with. But there's also a couple of other issues. One of them is is the user interface intuitive enough? So if we could just get people to give it a test and see if it makes sense, that would be good. And then the other one is around permissions. Right now we have a separate permission for allowing people to upload images in the rich text editor. And the question is, do we want another permission for allowing people to upload files in the rich text editor? Or do we want to reuse the image permission and say if they're allowed to upload images, they're also allowed to upload files?
Good question.
I think a separate permission makes sense because files are more dangerous than images. So you can have all sort of files like .exe files or.
How is that being handled? Because aren't image extensions currently being handled on a field by field basis? Where would that information come from if it's going into the rich text editor?
So for images, the permission or the extension list is also controlled. Oh wait, I'm not actually sure images even have an extension list. They probably do, but the max file upload and stuff like that, it's on the text format configuration. So when you enable the image button, it also shows you options for restricting the types of images that can be uploaded and where they should be uploaded into and things like that. So permission-wise, it's actually a lot controlled in some ways by having access to a particular text format. But then on top of that, then there's another permission for uploading so that you could have access to the image dialog to insert images, but you might not have access to upload.
It's really weird that we're still calling them text formats now that they're actually all sorts of functionality in there.
Yeah, actually, I think that we actually don't call them text formats exclusively.
We call them editors, don't we?
Okay.
But we're our brains still call them input formats or whatever they were when we met them. But yeah, I think in the interface they're called editors and editors and formats or something like that.
Yeah, they're actually called text editors now.
Oh, that's much better.
Yeah, text editors and formats. And so when you add a new text format, it's actually the link is add text editor now, and it's all called text editors now.
Yeah, we tried to make it a little less Drupal, a little more human, but it's hard.
Although it's still called formats in the URL. That's fine. Anyway, that one needs work. Functionality-wise, this is another one where it's we're in alignment now. I think the functionality is great. The implementation is pretty solid, and we're just getting through those last hangups. So. Thanks again to Graham72 for all of your effort on that, especially, I know it's been a little bit of a long slog, even reaching consensus that we should even add that feature. So I'm glad to, I appreciate your persistence in talking everybody through that and bringing everybody around. Okay, let's see, I think that's it for the updates. I lost my agenda. There's also a bucket of other issues that are tagged for 1.10. You can check the GitHub issue tracker for other issues. Things are still on the table as long as they can get into an RTBC state this week. I'm doing my best to keep on top of those, and Jeff has been merging a lot of things as well. So again, like cross-reviewing is one of the most important things we can do right now to accelerate things, to make it so that we can get in the most functionality and make it so that 1.10 is totally awesome. So that's it. We now move into general discussion and Q&A. Looks like there's a couple of items in here. I'm going to hand it back off to you, Jen.
Okay. Am I muted? No. Okay, good. So I don't know who added the first one, but it's generally about automatic updates, which is something that we've been revisiting multiple times during the 1.x cycle of Backdrop. I think it's something we would really love to have figured out for the 2.x cycle of Backdrop. We did a bunch of work earlier this year on trying to figure out what would be involved in that and how we could make it safe. I don't know if anyone, the person who put it on the agenda, wants to talk to us specifically about what we should talk about right now.
I put it on there, but I don't really have anything to really add except just to ask where that's at, because I know there was some flurry of discussion and then it kind of went away. And after the last month and a half, obviously, there's probably a number of people interested. I think it would be, I didn't put it on there just because I would really like it, but I think that it would be a great marketing tool for Backdrop, and it would draw a lot of people, especially the small scale people who don't have a full-time person or don't have somebody,
I also feel like I would really like it, but I think it's a great tool that would directly benefit our target audience. Like our audience are people who are not going to be necessarily staying on top of every update of the software going forward, and having something that can help protect them, I think, is good. We just need to figure out a way that we can do that that puts them at the least amount of risk of everything breaking with automatic updates. I know in the WordPress world, depending on what you're doing with your WordPress site, you turn on automatic updates and then it breaks every time there's an update. And that's been frustrating for some people. But yeah, I think that might kind of tie into the next issue that I added, which is something that I had wondered about yesterday. For the last few releases we've had of Backdrop, or at least these major security releases, we've issued releases not only for the latest version, which is 1.9, but also 1.8. And in the case of the Drupal 2, I think we did one for 1.7 as well. And so it seems like maybe we should have a process that would, like, if we had automatic updater, we might be able to say, like, the automatic updater won't update you to the next major version if we have security, or maybe there's an option that would let you say, like, only opt me into security updates, and then it would keep you on whatever version you're on. Or maybe like a manual button that would say, like, okay, now I'm ready to update to the next version. You can push it and you can test things. But yeah, I think it is a conversation we should have to figure out what kind of experience we want our users to have in Backdrop 2 for managing updates going forward. There's also a technical conversation for how we're going to do it, but just in terms of what we want to do, I think is a good first step too. Nate, do you have thoughts? You're muted.
I do have some thoughts. Mike Banton has done a lot of thinking around this, and I see that we have the link to his thoughts in that issue. He also has worked a lot on a standalone PHP project that conceptually it's supposed to make it so that it could be like a CMS updater, like third-party project where it would be responsible for doing the updates. I'm trying to figure out what the name of that is, but I keep forgetting it. It's not in his little document. Do you know what it is, Jen? Do you recall? Well, anyway, although I think that's a good idea, and I'd love to see us continuing to pursue that. But as he found out, and as it's demonstrated from the project that he's put together, being completely comprehensive can be really complicated. And I feel like maybe that would be good. I think he mentioned that like his project is something like with all of its dependencies, because it's a composer-driven project. His project is something like twice the size of Backdrop itself, like as far as code weight is concerned. And he's like, I'm not sure how you'd feel about like, tripling the size of Backdrop to add auto updating ability. And I'm like, I'm not sure either. You know, it would really depend on if the functionality was really that killer or not.
No.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is that like, I'm also just like really leery of like that level of complexity.
No, yeah, that sounds horrible.
So I'd like for us to pursue another parallel track to that, at least, that is probably like, you know, let's look at what WordPress does, because I'm sure it's much simpler. It's probably a little bit of a high risk thing where it's probably, you know, like, oh, just unzip the files and then replace them. Like, that's what I imagine WordPress does, because WordPress is always like Occam's razor to like every single problem, for better or worse. And so I feel like there are simpler solutions out there, but they'll come at the cost of, you know, potentially catastrophic failure. But still, like, the world that we're living in right now, like, it would have been really nice had we had automatic updates, because risking catastrophic failure was worth it. Because right now, if your sites are not updated, you're suffering from catastrophic failure anyway. And so the inaction is just as catastrophic, maybe even more so, than having catastrophic action that was caused by an automatic update. So,
and if we had like, you know, an option, and this would be a lot more work for us, but if we had an option where the automatic updater could only do security updates, and we'd push out patches for every minor version, so that all the minor versions can, like, you know, patch themselves without changing anything else, I think that would be very, very useful. Yeah, and that would have a low risk of breaking things.
Yeah. Absolutely agree.
I think there's a way that we can do that by supporting more minor versions and issuing releases for each of them with just the bug fix release or the security fix release, and then the automatic updater could pull the patch from our history and apply that to existing sites. So that way, if you were a developer and you were running Backdrop 1.5 for some reason and you couldn't update to 1.6, you could still get updates through the normal process. The updater would pull just the patch version for its automatic process, and everyone will kind of get the kind of protection they need that way. We would just need to figure out, like, because we are looking at moving on to, you know, Backdrop 1.10, how hard is it to take fixes for 1.9 and create patch versions all the way back to 1.0? Like, should we have some cutoff point where it's like, really, you shouldn't be running 1.5 anymore? Is a year's worth of releases enough? Or 2 years? I don't know.
Yeah, I think we'd take a look at the usage statistics. Like, we could come up with a policy that was actually based on percentages, possibly, or maybe not. Maybe that's just too much.
Yeah. Well, obviously, we wouldn't be able to do it for all the previous versions because they wouldn't have the updater in them. So this would only be a thing going forward.
Yeah.
But I think, like, adopting a policy of supporting more than one minor release, we could do now. We just need to do it within reason. I don't think we should adopt a policy of supporting every minor release. But I think, like, if we could say, you know, for the last few releases, we've supported 2 versions of Backdrop. If we were to say, from now on, we're always going to support 2, and then starting in Backdrop 2, we're always going to support 3, I think that people can get on board with that. Like, they'll feel more confident with us having a, like, stated policy that we've already been following before the automatic updater comes out. So I think just thinking about that is important.
Yeah, I think the more versions we can support, the better, because, like, the core security updates happen fairly infrequently. That, like, patching 10 branches doesn't seem like an insurmountable amount of work for us.
Yeah, it's not. Although it is a lot of work, like on an occasional basis, though. I mean, yeah, it's not
hopefully this doesn't continue to happen.
Right.
So, and, you know, I think the automatic updater, if we actually just started it off on the security update thing, like, you know, maybe that might be interesting instead of figuring out, like, the general purpose update the whole system for every updater. If we just started off with a security update system, that might be interesting.
Yeah. I think that's also more manageable in terms of us introducing something crazy and new. It's the least risk to existing sites. It gives you the benefit of the security protections. And yeah, it's a good place for us to start.
Yeah, and then we wouldn't have to worry about breaking people's functionality if we're just doing patches of their They're whatever, just the security patches. But yeah, this is exciting.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this up again, Larry. And it's something that we keep revisiting, and then we keep saying, oh, Backdrop 2 is so far away. But now I think it's not so far away, and we also have a lot of additional motivation right now to figure this out. So
yeah, I feel like every time we have something that says Backdrop 2, like that's another thing, does it need to be 2? Like, does this?
Well, it depends on how crazy the solution is. I mean, it sounds like what we're talking about now could be done in a module, just something that would apply to patches to core.
Well, or
replace files. I don't know. Patching is difficult because patch is not installed on all systems. Like the command line patch is not installed on all systems, and there's no way that we would want to attempt to patch with PHP implementation of patch. Then you just have a whole new set of problems.
Huh. Patch isn't installed on all systems?
No.
What systems don't have patch?
One of my servers, because I was doing updates yesterday.
One of your servers? I thought you were going to say like Windows. I'm like, well, can't we just say Backdrop doesn't run on Windows servers, or like?
Didn't we already say that?
Like,
I know.
I think it's out of the box Ubuntu 1804.
What?
No, 1604, because that's what my server's running. Yeah. I mean, we're developers, so we add developer tools to things,
All right, so we have some technical issues to discuss, but I think that we have sort of an idea of the direction to go in.
Yeah. Let's do it.
We all jump into the issue and say, what are we doing? We're experimenting. That's what we're doing. So any opportunity or any approach, like if you think that maybe it's viable, then try it out. See how things go. And I really do think we could learn something by taking a look at WordPress's auto updater and the various fails that have happened around it, for better and worse.
So I have another idea to this topic. So I really find automatic updates great or promising, and I don't want to be a break on it. But I have another idea, so a sort of workaround maybe. If auto updates are too difficult to implement for the next release, or for the 1.11, what do you think about the idea to implement a real or actual maintenance mode, meaning that Backdrop stops to work and shows only a static page, but not like the current maintenance mode where, for example, the user forum is still active, which was a problem with this security update. And I had the idea, so because you can't log in as admin with such a mode, but if we would handle this via settings PHP, it could be an option. And for example, because I was, as you know, last month or 2 months before in Africa, and had a couple of days with a bad internet connection, and there was a security update. And so that would have helped me a lot if I could put this site just in this real maintenance mode where it's no longer attackable.
Are you thinking that it would be toggled only via settings.php?
Mm-hmm.
So you would have to, so you could turn it on. Yeah, I think it's a good idea, by the way, because
how is this different than current maintenance mode?
Because the user login form is where a lot of exploits are happening, and the user login form is still accessible when the site is in maintenance mode.
Huh.
So it would make it so that it would truly kind of just disable your site, although that's kind of, it might not be any different than like, having your web server point to a different directory or something like that, or just doing something of that nature. But
deliver index.html instead of index.php.
Yeah, but they're still, I mean, like that
kind of that gets into server like maintenance territory, which is not the same as a developer territory. Like a lot of devs might not know how to configure Apache, probably don't know how to configure Apache, but they know PHP inside and out. So I see where the value is.
Can we have backdrop, like we could even have, theoretically, there could be a setting that would use your update status to say, oh, is there a security update for core? If yes, write this value into settings.php, which shuts the site down. Like you could even have like super extreme measures where the site could turn itself off if it felt like it was in danger.
Oh, interesting. Huh. Okay, let's talk about that. I think it's a discussion that we should have. Olaf, have you made an issue for that yet?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and do so, and then we can brainstorm in there, because it sounds like we've got lots of variations as to how aggressive we could be with that. I have a couple other ideas as well that I could also write down. That would kind of middle ground. But let's take it to the issue queue.
Okay.
Jen's writing. Oh, actual maintenance mode. Okay, great. Have we talked about? Oh, okay. We did talk about this a little bit. Security releases. How many minor versions do we want to go back on?
Yeah, I don't know if we need to come up with a policy today, but I think it would be good. Like just because the last few releases we've done 2. If we were able to tell people, so 2 releases ago we did 3. I checked usage statistics this week, and most of the people who were on 1.7 before the last release are no longer on 1.7. We're down to like 10 sites or something. I should check that again today. Those numbers change daily. But it seemed like it was safe to only do 8 and 9. But I don't know if we had a policy that was like we're always going to do 3, 7, 8, 9. We would have more people feeling confident about remaining on older versions. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing. Confidence is good. Older versions not good. So I don't know if we need a policy where like even like today we could say we'll always do 2, and then from now on every security release comes down we can do 2 issues, and in the future as we start to expand our support for patch releases or whatever we want to do, we can change that number. But right now we only officially support 1. I think it would be good to, if we want to change that, talk about it.
I don't know. Let's table it for this meeting. I think we're well over our hour mark here for our weekly meeting. Although it's been an exciting week, and this is the last meeting before Feature Freeze. So I'm really happy to see everybody that came and joined this meeting, and thank you all for the great discussions. Let's wrap it up, though. So
where should I open an issue about versions? Just how many minor versions we should support? Is that an ops issue? Don't know. I'll go figure it out. It's fine.
I would just use the main issue queue, because I think that's where people are going to look.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, thanks everybody for coming to this meeting again. If you have any further questions or comments, jump in the Gitter channel. There will probably be a lot of activity there later this afternoon. Obviously, issue queue, we've got plenty of stuff to work on. And thanks everybody for getting all the stuff merged in the last few weeks too, especially Jeff, who's not here anymore. But yeah, good work. Great reviews. Fantastic new features.
And if you want to talk about auto updating issue 2018, I know we mentioned that at the beginning, but again, I like that it's like hashtag 2018. It makes it look like it's like updates 2018, like that's like an initiative name or something like that.
Could happen.
Yeah, it could happen.
All right. Okay. Thanks everyone. We'll see you next week, not before.
Bye.
Bye guys. Thanks again.